Your problem has never been not confident enough. It's that your nervous system is still convinced that visibility is dangerous, and it keeps trying to protect you by shutting you down in the exact moments you wish you were calm and clear. The people you read as quietly confident aren't running a different personality. They're running a different prediction model about themselves, other people, and what happens if things go wrong. They don't need to prove anything because, internally, nothing vital is on trial. They walk into a room, a meeting, or a conflict with a very specific psychological advantage. Their sense of worth is decoupled from the outcome. That one shift changes their body language, voice tone, and decisions in ways most people feel but can't explain. In this episode, we are going to decode that shift, show you how it's built, and quietly challenge why you've been chasing the loud version of confidence that never really fits. Why quiet confidence hits different. Quiet confidence is not shyness, and it's not fake humility. It's a specific way your mind relates to status, mistakes, and attention. It matters now because we live in an environment where loud certainty is cheap and overexposed, but deep trust is rare and increasingly valuable in relationships, careers, and leadership. Psychologists would describe part of this as self-efficacy, your belief in your capacity to handle what life throws at you, more than belief that things will always go well. People with high self-efficacy don't just feel better, they choose harder problems, stay with them longer, and recover faster when things break. That internal track record produces an outer calm that looks like quiet confidence. But what you see on the surface is the last link in the chain, not the first. Here's the open loop we'll follow. Quiet confidence turns out to be a system you can build step by step, not a personality type you either have or don't. In the next minutes, we'll track how it forms at 3 levels: your internal narrative, your body's nonverbal signals, and your social habits, and then show you a practical, science-backed way to start rewiring all 3. The hidden architecture of quiet confidence. Quiet confidence is not the absence of self-doubt. It's a different relationship to self-doubt. People high in what researchers call quiet ego still notice their fears and flaws, but those signals don't dominate the entire internal conversation. In a randomized intervention study, increasing quiet ego characteristics like non-defensiveness, empathy, and a growth-focused identity led to lasting gains in psychological flourishing, which is a state of optimal mental and emotional well-being. Translation: when your sense of self is less fragile and less self-absorbed, your baseline calm goes up, even under pressure. Here's the part most people completely miss. The opposite of insecurity isn't hype, it's perspective. The loud, performative version of confidence keeps your attention locked on how you are being seen. Quiet confidence redirects that attention toward the task, the person in front of you, and the long game. That shift from self-focus to situation focus is one of the most reliable internal markers of real confidence, and you can feel it in your own body the moment it happens. Micro insight: if your self-talk in high-stakes moments is mostly about me, how I look, sound, rank, you will almost always feel less confident, not more. The quietly confident person is running a different mental script. What is needed here, and what can I competently bring to it? But what actually rewires that script so it doesn't collapse the moment you're criticized or ignored? We'll get there when we talk about mastery and how your brain tracks evidence. Identity-level confidence, self-efficacy versus performance. If you've ever done well at something and still felt like a fraud, you've already met the gap between achievement and self-efficacy. Self-efficacy, a concept introduced by psychologist Albert Bandura, refers to an individual's belief in their ability to carry out the actions required to achieve particular results. It's the confidence in oneself to influence events and have control over one's environment. Bandura's work on self-efficacy shows that what drives our behavior is not what we've done, but what we believe we can handle next. People with strong self-efficacy don't assume they'll never fail. They assume they can recover, adapt, and learn when they do. Here's the expectation reversal. Quiet confidence isn't built by stacking external wins. It's built by stacking evidence that Even when this goes badly, I'm still fundamentally intact. That belief lowers the perceived cost of trying, which makes you more willing to take intelligent risks, which then actually increases your competence over time. In other words, confidence follows from a loop of attempt to feedback to adjustment, not from perfectly curated performances. Micro insight. Your nervous system is not asking, "Am I impressive?" It's asking, "Am I safe if this goes wrong?" Quiet confidence emerges when your answer is increasingly yes, not because life is gentle, but because you've proven to yourself repeatedly that you can survive awkwardness, disappointment, and even visible failure. So how do you deliberately train your brain to update that belief instead of waiting for life to randomly do it for you? That's where mastery experiences and controlled exposure come in next. The mastery loop: how quiet confidence is actually built. Bandura identified 4 main sources that shape self-efficacy: mastery experiences, vicarious learning, social persuasion, and emotional states. Quiet confidence leans heavily on the first and last. Mastery experiences, small, real wins at slightly uncomfortable tasks, are the strongest signal to your brain that I can handle this. Emotional states, how overwhelmed or regulated you feel, decide whether your brain encodes a situation as proof I can or proof I can't. Most people unknowingly train fragile confidence by chasing big, dramatic wins and avoiding any scenario where they might be visibly average. That creates a pattern where your sense of competence is tied to narrow situations and ideal conditions. Quietly confident people do almost the opposite. They deliberately practice being good enough in non-ideal conditions, which teaches the nervous system that temporary discomfort does not equal danger. Here is a concrete structure you can use to build quiet confidence. Step 1. Define a micro-skill that matters to you, asking one clarifying question in meetings, holding eye contact 1 second longer, expressing disagreement once per week. Step 2. Practice it in low-stakes contexts first, where failure is mildly uncomfortable but not catastrophic. Step 3. Track what actually happens, not what you feared would happen, and label each repetition as evidence of capacity, not a verdict on your worth. The goal is not to feel fearless. The goal is to feel familiar. Your brain relaxes around what it has repeatedly survived. If inner belief is one pillar, the next is what your body is broadcasting before you say a word, and how that either reinforces or quietly sabotages everything you've built internally. The nonverbal layer: calm signals versus performed confidence. We instinctively read other people's confidence long before they speak through posture, gaze, facial expression, and tiny shifts in movement. Yet decades of research on nonverbal behavior show that common advice like always hold strong eye contact or always sit up straight and forward oversimplifies how humans actually perceive presence and warmth. In one study simulating a clinical interaction, combinations like an upright posture with a neutral facial expression were read differently in terms of empathy depending on context and observer. The key point: nonverbal confidence comes from being aligned and natural, not from holding stiff poses. Here's the pattern most people don't see. When your internal state is anxious, but you push exaggerated power signals, overly intense eye contact, forced smiles, sharp gestures, most observers register something as off, even if they can't articulate why. Quiet confidence, by contrast, shows up as a smaller but more consistent signal. Relaxed shoulders, stable but not staring eye contact, responsive facial expressions, and movements that match the moment instead of trying to dominate it. Your body doesn't need to shout confidence. It needs to stop contradicting itself. A calm, grounded posture plus a voice that doesn't rush often feels more trustworthy than any power pose. So how do you interrupt this pattern? Notice how different it feels if you imagine someone saying, "I'm really confident in this," while fidgeting and scanning the room, versus someone who speaks quietly, pauses, and seems more interested in clarity than in your approval. Your brain tracks that difference in milliseconds. But what if your internal state isn't calm yet? Can you still leverage your body to help build quiet confidence without faking it? That's where regulation and quiet ego practices meet. The quiet ego shift. Getting out of your own way. The quiet ego construct describes people whose sense of self is less defensive, more empathic, and more growth-oriented. In a randomized controlled trial, a quiet ego-based intervention not only increased these traits, but also led to higher psychological flourishing, partly through increases in emotional intelligence. Practically, that means when your identity isn't constantly trying to protect itself, your mental energy is freed up for learning, connection, and nuanced thinking, all of which read as grounded confidence. Expectation reversal. A lot of people assume that to feel more confident, they need to think about themselves more. More affirmations, more self-focus, more analysis. But over-focusing on yourself, especially in social situations, tends to amplify self-consciousness, not reduce it. Quietly confident people often do something quieter and far more radical. They place a deliberate percentage of their attention on others' reality. What are they feeling? What do they need clarity on? What would actually help this room right now? Let's describe practical quiet ego habits that build quiet confidence. Mental posture. Before entering a conversation, set a simple intention like, understand first, or add one concrete value. This shifts you from, how am I doing, to, what can I contribute? Non-defensive curiosity. When you receive criticism or confusion, ask, what's at least one useful piece of information in this, rather than immediately justifying? Identity anchor. Keep a small set of non-negotiable values, integrity, learning, kindness, that you quietly measure yourself against instead of external reactions. What is our key takeaway here? When your ego gets quieter, your presence often gets louder in exactly the ways that matter. People feel safer around you, more listened to, and more willing to trust your judgment. So far, we've focused on inner architecture and subtle behavior, but how do you move from insight into a concrete daily protocol that steadily raises your baseline of quiet confidence over the next weeks and months? That's where we go next. The Quiet Confidence Protocol, Practical Build Plan. Let's pull this together into a simple, repeatable system, a way to train quiet confidence like a skill, not chase it like a mood. Step 1. Choose one domain, not your entire life. Pick a single context where you want to feel quietly confident, one recurring meeting, one relationship, one creative project. Narrowing focus reduces pressure and makes progress measurable. Step 2. Set a handle this goal, not a dominate this goal. Write one sentence. Quiet confidence here means I can ask one question/state my position once, stay curious instead of shutting down. This aligns with self-efficacy research, where realistic, specific goals create better motivation and resilience. Step 3. Design micro-exposures. Once or twice a week, intentionally put yourself in a slightly uncomfortable situation. Speak up with one clear point, share a draft before it feels perfect, or calmly disagree when it really matters. The goal isn't to be flawless, it's to prove to yourself, I can handle being seen at this level. Step 4. Debrief with a quiet ego lens. After each exposure, answer 3 questions. What did I handle better than my fear predicted? What did I learn about the other person or the situation? How did I act in line with my values, regardless of outcome? This shifts your brain's focus from how did I look to how did I grow and contribute, which reinforces both self-efficacy and quiet ego traits. Step 5. Add one nervous system anchor. Before those moments, use a 30 to 60-second regulation ritual. Slow exhale breathing, feeling your feet on the ground, or briefly relaxing your jaw and shoulders. Regulating your emotional state changes how your brain encodes the experience, making it more likely to register as mastery instead of threat. The protocol is successful when you can say, with increasing truth, I may not control the outcome, but I trust myself to stay grounded, learn, and repair if needed. That sentence is the inner voice of quiet confidence. Now notice that none of these steps require you to become louder, more charismatic, or more extroverted. What changes is your prediction about yourself under pressure. Once you can run this protocol in one domain, you can deliberately transplant it into relationships, creative work, money decisions, and even how you handle health and uncertainty. Each expansion becomes another layer of earned calm. Identity resonance, seeing yourself differently. If you've spent years identifying as the anxious one, the overthinker, or the background character, your brain will try to keep you consistent with that story, even as you grow. Quiet confidence becomes stable when it moves from something I sometimes feel to a way I relate to myself and others. Here is an identity-level shift you can test. Instead of I'm not confident, try I'm someone who is actively training quiet confidence, rep by rep. Instead of I'm socially awkward, try I'm someone who values depth over performance, and I'm learning the skills to let that come through clearly. This isn't about pretending, it's about choosing a more accurate story that includes your direction, not just your past. In the research on quiet ego and flourishing, people didn't become different species. They became slightly different versions of themselves who related to their fears, successes, and relationships with more flexibility and less defensiveness. The more you see yourself as a work in progress who reliably shows up, the less pressure you feel to prove yourself in every interaction. That reduction in pressure is exactly what others read as grounded, trustworthy confidence. Quiet confidence on purpose. If parts of this felt uncomfortably accurate, that's a good sign. It means your pattern recognition is working, and your brain just saw the gap between who you've been rehearsing and who you're actually capable of being. Quiet confidence isn't a personality upgrade waiting to happen to you. It's a set of small, repeatable choices about where you place your attention, how you interpret discomfort, and what story you tell yourself after each attempt. If you want to internalize this, don't binge another 10 videos. Choose one domain, pick one handle this metric, and run the protocol for the next 7 days. Then, come back and use the comments to document what shifted, especially the moments where you felt slightly more grounded than your past self would have been. Those are the data points your nervous system needs to see. If this episode helped you feel seen and more precisely understood, subscribe and share the one insight you're going to test this week. Your question or pattern might quietly shape the next deep dive we do on identity, confidence, and human behavior.